So we're on our maroon Rover 75 1.8 connoisseur, and we're now going to be doing the exhaust on the car. And as you can see, we're going to do the back box, because although it's not actually leaking, it's beginning to break up and rust away. We want to change that before we need to. And the exhaust on the car is a full exhaust that appears to go all the way right down almost to the catalytic converter. We've bought just purely a back box and a pipe that comes to around about here. When we first bought the new exhaust, we roughly marked up where the cut would have to be, which we'll probably check again later on. That just gives you a little shot from the other side of the back box. You see it's rusty, but even with the engine running, there's no obvious leaks, but we do want it changed. However, you may be able to hear there is a leak on the exhaust. And if we come round here towards the front of the car, and there's the catalytic converter, and here is like this almost joining bracket. You can see there's two bolts there, and if I bring the camera right down, you should be able to see there's like a slot there, and this bracket, if you see there, that slot there I'm just pointing to, that is where it's blowing at the moment. Now we've managed to actually find a bracket that looks exactly like that, so providing the rest of the exhaust is alright and we can remove it, we're hoping to replace that. But I just thought I'd show you that's where the exhaust is blowing. It's almost the bracket, the slot that's there is sort of opened out and corroded and allowing exhaust gases out. And it's just before the lambda sensor, so really we want to change it as well, because it could technically affect what it senses. It shouldn't be because it's after it, but we certainly want it changed, and it's certainly noisy as well. Right, so now we've got the engine turned off, and we really just run the engine a little bit just so it had a run before we do other work on it, because you want to know the engine's running fairly okay before you do other work to it. So yeah, that's our plan, is to do this back box, replace that, and then, as I said, up at the front, I think it's a job to see really, is that almost join up bracket that's been put there to replace that. That all depends on how the exhaust is, but hopefully they're the two bits we're going to do to get this exhaust system back up and running and ready for an MOT as well, because it certainly won't get through it with that leak that's there. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is remove these like two cross members so that the exhaust can be dropped down. That first one near the front, and then as we come over to the back, just before the fuel tank, there's another one, so we're going to remove both of those first. That gets them out the way and allows us to let the exhaust drop down if we need to. Right, so we're now trying to remove the bolts that are on the bracket, the bolt and nut. Quite tight, but are moving. What we have been doing is soaking it in WD, releasing sort of oil to hope that it helps, which hopefully it has done, because how rusted they are, it's quite amazing that they are undoing, but they are. So that's the next thing we're doing, is going to try and get this bracket that joins the bit of the exhaust that's linked to the catalytic converter and the whole rest of the exhaust system going to the back, get that removed and see what condition the exhaust is actually in. Yeah, as you can see, this one's a little bit more difficult than the first one, but it is beginning to move, so just going to put a little bit more of that penetrating oil on, just to get it moving a little bit better. Yeah, so we're now going to let that soak a little bit and then have another go at removing it. You can see the bracket is more or less breaking up as it's coming off, and what I'll do, I'll show you the new one when we put it on. That'll probably give you a better visual reference of what this bracket actually looks like. In some ways quite clever if it's original. We found the replacement, so yeah, hopefully if the exhaust is all right we can put the new one on. And yeah, amazingly both of those bolts have come out. Considering how rusted they are, normally when they're like that you've got no chance of getting them out, but those have come away, so that's one less awkward a job that we've got. They're both out now. It'll be a case of removing that bracket and just seeing what condition the exhaust is in. So yeah, as you can see there, the one bracket is more or less split into two where it's so corroded, so it's just going to be a case of trying to get it down in bits. As you can see, there's a bit of it there, so it's pretty rusted away, and still that bit's left up there. So yeah, that's what we're doing now, is just remove all that, and I'll show you how it looks afterwards. Yeah, so it's also pretty loose, so hopefully it'll come out fairly easy as well. So although it looks very rusty, it's not actually rusted together too much. Right, so we've unhooked the two rubber holding brackets so the exhaust can drop down, and more or less what's been left is the inner collar, and the outer collar, as you can see there, is just all broke up, and it looks like that is what has failed, which is what we thought. The bracket has failed where you could see that slot letting the exhaust gases out. What we'll do now is go about removing the rest of the exhaust. What we might do is take the whole exhaust out from this point here all the way to the back, and that will allow us to join the new one to it outside, or at least cut it outside, rather than trying to do it up under the car. Right, so that's the exhaust now down. It more or less came down, and there's what's left of the bracket, and you can see there that slot is when you clamp it down, that gets pulled tighter together, and the other outer shell covers that slot up, but it looks like where it's all rusted, that's how the exhaust was leaking through that slot. What we've also done is took down the heat shield. It's quite a big one on this, and that's basically so that when we do our underneath painting the underneath, we'll be able to paint all the way up under the tunnel of the car to add some protection right across the whole floor, and that gives us a good check. And you can even see now, which you don't often see because the shield, the cables that go to your gear lever for your change. So yeah, you can see all that, and up there is the lambda sensor, the second one, and you can see it poking through into the exhaust. So yeah, that's now down at the front exhaust. Now it'll be a case of getting the rest of the exhaust down so we can get it out and then start cutting it to put the back box in, and hopefully this exhaust should be okay to use as well by the looks of things, but we'll know fully once we've got it right down. And if I just do a pan over towards the back of the car, you can see that that second heat shield, once that's out, then it'll be a case of just removing that back box from its fixing points, and the whole exhaust will hopefully have dropped down. That's how that heat shield is. It's a series of little bolts holding that on. That's what we've removed. Yeah, and these are just the last two bolts holding the heat shield on, just like the others that we've removed. As I say, the reason we're removing this is because we're also going to be painting the underneath and treating any surface rust, which is what we do on all the cars when we take them on. So and that is that last shield down and out the way. And now you can see all the way along the tunnel with the shield removed, and yeah, it's going to give us really nice and easy access to paint the underneath. Last thing to remove is where the back box is held up, and it is just two rubber mountings hooked off of this strap. So once we've removed them, this all should come down. Right, so as I said, now what we're doing is just getting the back box off of its rubber mounts. What we've decided to do is, as there's a bracket round there and the rubber mounts are sort of almost hidden up above the top of this big back box, we're going to undo the strap that goes round it, and hopefully that'll get it down. Then we can remove the rubber mounting brackets and what's left of the strap afterwards. Yeah, once again we're just using a little bit of WD or releasant oil just to make the bolt come off a little bit easier. And that's the exhaust down. So considering that rusty bracket and the rusty bolts, it actually come off not too bad, because often you can really get caught out by those rusty bolts. But as you can see, this back box, although not leaking, is pretty bad, and really does need changing, which is what we decided straight away when we got the car. We knew that was something that was going to need changing. So that is it down. All we've got to do now is just remove the rest of the bracket and those rubber mounted or rubber hangers, and we'll probably remove that piece of heat shield as well, so we can paint up under there. That just gives you a little look of the exhauster laying down underneath the car with the heat shields by it as well. Right, so we're going to remove the last of the rubber mountings, and when they're a little bit stiff, we sometimes use this tool, which does normally work, or it certainly makes things a little bit easier just to get those rubbers off. And that's it off. So yeah, even with the tool it was tight, so without that tool it would be very, very difficult. We'll get the other one off and then that bracket will be down. Right, so we've got the old exhaust off, and we've got it out of the car and going into our garage at the moment, and we're just double checking that the back box lines up to our original marks that we did under the car, which is. And as you said before, the reason we've took it off is because one, it's going to be easier to cut, but secondly, because we're having to do that bracket that's right at the end, it's going to be a lot easier. Now, when we did our other 75, we did actually do it under the car, so we cut it there under the car and put this on without removing it all. But this is just going to make things a little bit easier for us, and because of that bracket, we'll be able to do that easier, but it's also so that we can paint the underneath as well. Yeah, so another thing with putting them together like that is we can check that they do roughly line up and look like the right back box, which this one does, but you will see there is quite a difference. The back boxes are never going to look the same. This old one does look very similar to the one that came off of our other 75, but the one that replaced it was completely different. This is a little bit more similar, but you can see it is slightly smaller and almost more a traditional shape, but the mounting points do line up, and that's the important thing, it will fit in that space. Right, so I thought I'd also show you, now we've got them off, is that joining bracket that joins the catalytic converter part of the exhaust to the rest of the exhaust here that we've now removed, because it's quite interesting. We see this up there, and then by luck, when we was looking for something else, this actually come up on eBay, and we thought it definitely looks very similar. We'd get it and hopefully it would be the same, which now we've got it off, it is literally the same piece. So we're certainly pleased about that, and it's going to work for us very well. But you can see now just how much this bracket had corroded over the years from looking, we assume, very similar to this one, and you can now see how this outer shield, where you can see that join line there, has more or less completely rusted away, which then revealed the inner slot and was letting it leak. And if you look inside this one, you can see that inner slot there, and how it's been completely exposed on this old bracket. And hopefully, as we say, if that exhaust cleans up okay, we'll just be able to change this back box part and put the new bracket on. But it certainly does look a lot longer exhaust once you've got it off the car. Right, so now we've got all our marks sorted out, and even off the car it's looking good, which if we were leaving it on the car, we'd have just done another test fit just to make sure before we cut. We're now going to cut, leaving a little bit of access, so if there were any problems you could always cut a little bit more off rather than cutting too much off, and then you can't go back on that. Right, Right, so that is it now cut. They're at slightly different angles because we twisted it round as we were cutting it, and then it's fell away. But that's now left us with a bit of exhaust we want, providing it cleans up okay. And this bit that's going to be replaced. So yeah, you can get a better look at where it is really starting to break away. And it must be a fairly common fault, because the other 75 we got, when we got it, the exhaust more or less looked exactly the same and needed changing. So we assume that's a fairly common fault. Right, so now we've got the exhaust down, what we're doing is just giving it a little wash over. It's not too dirty under there, but we're using the parts washer fluid again, and just a brush and giving it a wash over, a little bit of a sort of a scrub to get any mud or grease off, and then we'll use our air pressurised cleaner, which I'll show you in a minute, then to rinse everything off. Right, so while the exhaust is off, what we're going to do is just give it a little wire brush and clean up while we've got the chance to do that, and probably then give it a heat-proof paint. Right, so we'll get on with that, and then we'll start painting. Right, so we've wire brushed down the old exhaust, and even put a little bit of rust treatment on it before we paint it. Only a little bit of surface rust, but actually in good condition, so we now know we can use that. We've checked that the new box fits onto that exhaust, which it does, and we'll be painting the new back box as well. We've just got to remove these labels and tape, then that will all match in like a completely refurbished exhaust. We've also got the bracket which holds up the new back box, which will make things a little bit easier when we come to fit it as well. But now it's time to get on and get it all painted and get that back box cleaned up. Right, so now all we're going to do is start spraying. So we're spraying with a heat-proof spray paint. I think it can even be used on stoves, so the heat of this exhaust should actually be quite low. We're going to be painting the middle bit red, and also the back box will be red as well, so that's all ready to be painted. So that's the underneath now washed off and looking a lot better. What we're now going to do is just anywhere where there's any little bits of surface rust, put some rust treatment on it to make sure that it shouldn't come back, or it certainly takes a lot longer to come back. And then we're going to be painting the tunnel area first, and then maybe putting the exhaust back or continuing to do the whole floor, but we will eventually do the whole floor area as well. But I just got to give you a look at it just after we've cleaned it. So what we're doing, we're just putting a little bit of rust killer or rust protection over any of the areas with surfaced rust on. Let that soak in overnight before we then put on the sort of red oxide hammerite undercoat, and then eventually we'll put on the hammerite coloured paint like on our other cars. And actually this was a good time to get to this car, because most of the rust is just surfaced rust and hasn't really ate in anywhere, but would have done if it had been less. So as well as protecting it for the future, we're stopping it before it really does become a problem. That's what we like to try and do, is get there before it really does become a problem, because it's a lot easier to put some killer rust on surface rust and paint it all before it really gets bad, because then it really is a hard job. So we've now got the first coat on our exhaust in the black and red. We'll be doing another coat just to get it finally finished, and the same with the back silencer box. That's got its first coat on now as well. And what we'll be doing with this bracket is painting that black, the same as the exhaust with that black spray paint. So the back silencer is now all painted in red, and the original bit of exhaust that we've now painted is now finished as well. Of course, all painted in that heat-proof paint, and that middle section now looking a lot better. Now it's not rusty, but painted clean and tidy, and ready to go back once we've finished painting the underneath of the car, which is quite a big job in itself. I'll cover some little bits of that in with us refitting this exhaust back. So what we're steadily doing now is painting the underneath. As you can see, we've already painted where the back silencer exhaust goes, but the spare wheel bit we haven't painted yet, and that's just what we're slowly doing now, is going through and painting the underneath and any of the structure and sort of back subframe, and then we'll slowly move down the front of the car and get all the underneath and the arch in the middle where the exhaust runs. So it's just now a steady job of steadily painting on. What we're doing is painting it in black hammerite paint after we've treated any of that surface rust which you see us doing last time. Right, so we're now painting the main floor and the middle arch recess where the exhaust runs, and we're doing that in red. So we're going to be doing the middle of the car first. That allows us to put the exhaust back if we want to, and then do each side of the floor, or we might try and get it all done at once. But I just wanted to show you this stage. So the back and a lot of the chassis members, they're going to be black hammerite, and this is a red hammerite under it, a bit like we did silver and black on our other 75. Right, so I thought I'd just give you a little update on the painting of the underneath of the car while we've got the exhaust down to do those repairs. We've now got the second coat done up there where the back silencer goes, and we're painting the subframe sort of back chassis part of the car, and of course the underneath of the boot wheel well as all got its second coat. And as we come now down to the middle floor pan, we've got the middle tunnel all painted with its second coat on. That allows us to put the exhaust back now before we've done the outer floor pans, which we will then start to do. So that gives us that flexibility if we want to get that exhaust back, which I think we will probably do. And yeah, as I say, this just gives you a little update on how we're getting on with the painting, doing kind of these two jobs in one, sorting out the exhaust and getting the whole of the floor pan and centre tunnel all painted. Right, so as you see just a minute ago, we've now got that centre tunnel painted red, which technically means we can put some of this heat shielding back, but it's quite sort of dusty and a lot of dry mud on it. Now, it does seem quite fragile, so we don't really want to get it wet and wash it. So what we're going to do, or try and do, just to clean it up a little bit without damaging it too much, is kind of brush a lot of this dirt and dust off on the outside and on the inside parts of this sets of heat shielding, and then blow it off with the compressed air. It's not going to be the same as washing it, but as you can see with this softer brush, it starts to remove a lot more of that dirt, and then with the air blowing over it, that should hopefully clean it. Right, so that's all that dirt dusted off of these heat protectors or heat insulation for the exhaust. As you can see, it's removed a lot of that dust. It's not made them back to a new, but I don't think washing them would have done either. But what it has done is just stop any dirt falling off when we put them back and then looking really dirty, dusty and grubby. And after cleaning them off with that brush, I certainly think washing them of any kind would have started to have broken up this insulation, especially here. It's almost like just a foil, so hopefully that's cleaned them up without damage them at all. Right, so as I said, we're now ready to put the sort of heat insulation that protects the body of the car from the heat of the exhaust. We're putting that on at the moment. We're going to put a little bit of copper slip on those bolts, then it's a case of holding it up and then attaching it on. So that's the stage where it's putting all this silver kind of insulation heat protector on at the moment. So that's what we're going to do. So what we're also doing is putting larger washers in to make sure it stays down, and basically it's this big bit towards the front of the car, then there's a smaller part and the little bit that goes right up by the back of the side, so it's in 3 sections, this heat protective material. Time to put back the exhaust, but what we're doing first of all is fitting this joining coupler. We don't think it's probably original, but it's how this exhaust was attached to the catalytic converter part of the exhaust originally, and this was the bit that had failed. We've managed to find this online, as I said, so we fitted that on this end so we can hopefully slide it underneath the car and ease it up onto the existing part of the exhaust. And as you can see, where the exhaust is gone into that, it's now opened up the expansion part of the ring, ready for the exhaust to go in it, and then we will then clamp it up, and hopefully that will solve the problem and put it back how it was originally before this piece had failed. Right, so we've now got all the insulation material back in the central tunnel, and as you see, we had the exhaust all painted on this chrome bracket on there, the lock joiner bracket, and we're about to slot that back onto the catalytic converter just by the lambda sensor there. It's going to be a pretty tight fit. It was quite tight getting it onto the bit of the exhaust we had off of the car, so this is going to be tight getting this on. But once we've got it on, then we'll bring the exhaust back up level and hook it on, and hopefully that'll work, and then we'll obviously have to clamp that up as well. Right, so we've got that on over. Actually, once we've got it lined up, it slid over quite easily. So by putting it onto the bit of exhaust in the garage where it was tight, that had opened it up and made it easier getting on. So that was the right decision to do it that way around. We're just going to do them up, not fully tight, but tight enough so it holds together, so that when we're manoeuvring the exhaust about, it doesn't come out, and hopefully holds its alignment as well. And then it'll be a case of hooking up. What we've done, hopefully, is we've put the rubber hanger brackets onto the car, and hopefully we can then hook the exhaust onto them, and then it'll be a case of going down to the back where the next hooking points are, and that'll be this part of the exhaust on. Then it'll be putting the new silencer box on. Right, so we've got those first rubber mountings on. Everything might need slightly readjusting, but it's holding there while we get the rest of the exhaust on. Then you can always do fine adjustments and move things about. And what we've done is we've got the middle silencer blocked up with some wood, and that's just holding it there in position and making it easier to put the back hooks on, and it also made it easier for us to get those front rubber hangers on as well. Right, so we're now at the back of the car, and as you can see, there's where the exhaust ends up, and we've got this space here ready for the back box to go in, and that back box comes with a bracket like the exhaust that came off. So what we've done is removed it from the exhaust, and you see that ends open there, and we've put it up in the rubber mountings because we think they're going to be difficult to get out if the exhaust is in this space here, and then we're going to put the exhaust into the bracket, hopefully making it easier, and hopefully we've got it the right length as well. Right, so that did work. The exhaust slid through that bracket nicely, and we're now just doing that up. Again, not fully tight, but enough so it holds, and then we'll make sure the exhaust is settling all right. And it went in at that join very well as well. We've just got to do that Benelli clip up, you can see there, and we put some exhaust paste on to hopefully make sure that that won't leak. Not much really holding the exhaust, only those front hooks, and then this bracket back here, so quite a bit of sort of wiggle room as we adjust it and sort it out.
Put the phone tight, right? That's it.
And that's the Benelli clip there tightened up. And then there are two like cross braces that go across the exhaust a little bit further up, so we'll be doing them and then getting the exhaust positioned into the right place. So we're just putting now those brackets back, as I mentioned. There's this bigger bracket and then a smaller one as well to go back, and then we'll be well on the way for this section to be completed. And now we've took the blocks of wood out from the middle there that was just supporting the exhaust. It's settling much better, and once we've done that, we'll just check that it is all settling right, and then we will probably be at the point of running the car to check that there are no leaks in the exhaust and everything's sealed up and nothing does sort of vibrate or catch that we haven't noticed. So also, as well as keeping you up to date with the floor and the exhaust, I just wanted to show you how we've been painting this front subframe and structure as well, and how that's going, and yeah, not going too bad. There's always areas to sort of touch up, or as different lights change and you get in different positions, you see other little bits and you paint them in, and over the time you're doing the other jobs, you slowly get all this painted as well, and that's what we're doing. And as we come round to the other side, you can see we've been doing that as well, and then it'll be a case of them putting these plastic wheel arch covers back, which we've also been cleaning up. Right, so all we're doing now is we've got the engine running and we're just checking that there are no exhaust blows. We've gone right under and had a look, and it looks like that joint has sealed, and of course it's cured the problem. We'll just have a little look at the joint to the back silencer and check that. And yeah, that join's looking good as well, which isn't always the case. Often you do have the little blows and you have to sort them out, but the good thing is there's nothing there. It did go on pretty well as well, so yeah, that's certainly good to see. All the exhaust is back, the middle tunnel's painted, we've cleaned all that insulation, so the last thing will be to do is to finish all that painting on the rest of the floor pan and around the subframes and around the wheel arches as well. So just continuing to keep you up to date, we've got under the wheel arches painted now, and also we're painting all this subframe structure there as well, and of course you can see the new exhaust fitted there, so it won't be long before we can put the plastic covers on both sides. Of course we've done the same on the other wheel arch as well. And just to give you a little look at the underneath with the new exhaust fitted there at the back, and of course the refurbished bit and that join part there, and you can see there how we're starting to paint each side of the floor pan. And as I come along to the back of the car, just to give you another little view of the progress here, yeah, looking much better with the exhaust all done now, and we're starting the first coat of the floor pan paint, which we're doing red like the centre tunnel, and then once we've got 2 coats of all the red paint and black paint done, then what we do is go under there with some little brushes, and you sort of move about at different angles and with spotlight and without, and hopefully get any bits that you've missed. And as you can see there, we've now got the plastic liners back into the front wheel arches now that we've got all that painted. So one of the last things we like to do once we've gone round and done the painting and both coats is just to go along and move the light about, and if we can see any little bits that have been missed, we just go around with a little brush and basically touch them in so that all the bits are covered. And we do that with a light at night and in the daytime as well, and hopefully going over it a couple of times you get every little bit of paint that we might have missed. Well, the painting of the underneath of the car, and of course fitting that new back box and reconditioning and repairing the rest of the exhaust is done. As you can see, we've got the wheel arch liners back and all under the front wheel arches painted. And that's the same for the back. The plastic wheel liners are back. The wheel arches are all nice and painted. The subframe at the back, as you can see, is painted as well. And if I take you underneath, I'll show you a little bit more. As you can see from the underneath, we're looking from the front of the car back at the moment. We've got all the red paint painted on the main floor pan. As we said before, now all the exhaust is back and those heat shields, and we've got the front subframe, hopefully you can see, all painted in black as well. And you can see that joiner, that's now back on and joining the catalytic converter to the rest of the exhaust, and is leak free. And looking at the back of the car forwards, you can see again that we've cleaned up all the fuel tank and painted those straps. The back subframe is all nice and painted, and of course our exhaust, our brand new back box, all painted red as well, and that join there. So that more or less is the job done. Hopefully it's been of interest and of use to you, and probably expanded a bit more than I first suspected. We were more or less going to cover just the exhaust being fitted, that new back box and that joiner at the front, but we ended up covering the whole painting of the floor, the subframes and the wheel arches as well. And just to give you another little view from the side of the car to show you the full floor and fitted exhaust, and all the subframes painted as well. Right, so we're about to put back the underpan or the under engine cover, but what we've decided to do is to get some new fixings, or the sort of clips that are used to hold this up. And as you can see, we've put the clip bits along the front, and we've also put the new fixing, like sort of screws or bolts, in ready as well. And if I bring you over here, you'll see that the ones that were originally on it were sort of rusty and in a bit of a state, so we've bought completely new fixings and the little bolts as well. And what we've done is bought them in a packet of 10, so we think that was quite worthwhile doing. So yeah, we're about to put that back on, but I just wanted to show you that, especially as we bought the new clips, and actually how easily available they are. You can sort of look on eBay for Rover 75's under engine tray clips and you'll find them. Right, so what we're doing now is just putting those new clips on. As you see, we've removed all the ones that were rusty. I showed that one how they were rusty away. So these clips now go on here. So it's a mixture of some going on the plastic under tray and some go onto the chassis. And it's just a case of putting them all on. Makes it a slightly longer job, but it's worth it because now we've got all those new clips on, and the tray will come away a lot easier, and you haven't got rusty clips rusting into those mountings either and causing rust stains on the tray. So as you see, we've got the under tray back up, or temporary back up. You can see we've got it propped with a bit of wood there, and then you slide it under the front of the bumper, and you get some of these screws in, which as you can see are the new ones, and then slowly you just go round and do them all up. So a little bit sort of fiddly to get it initially up there and propped. Once it's up there and the holes line up with the fixing points, it's just a case of going round and tightening them all up. And that, yeah, that is the under tray back on. You can see we're just doing those last few screws up now. That is that job done. Actually went fairly smoothly. Often you get exhaust leaks when you sort of refit bits of exhaust or remove bits, but they all went back together and didn't leak, and the floor was painted fairly well. Only really surface sort of rust, no real corrosion either, so we're certainly pleased about that. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the video, and have a look through some of the other videos on our channel as well. Don't forget our Twitter and Instagram pages as well. As always, thank you very much for watching.